when we're office workers, like we think, oh, well, we're white collar, so the labor movement isn't for us, it's for blue collar. And I think like maybe we should collectively start thinking about the way we phrase things.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
216 area code. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is David. I'm calling from Cleveland, Ohio.
David from Ohio. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I'm glad you took my call because I wanted to bring up something. I'm a big supporter of the labor movement in general, both like ideologically, and I do what I can, send a pizza to picket lines now and then, stuff like that. And I feel like the kind of worker that I am is kind of unrepresented, not really talked about, and like there's not really people in like my sort of field, we don't organize, we don't unionize, and I don't really see it talked about much either, is office workers, I mean, I work from home, so it's not, but it would have been an office position before the pandemic.
Right.
Where we work for a corporation. We're not seen. We're not out there. We're not teachers. We're not delivering your goods. We're not, selling you stuff. We're not retail workers. So we're not really public in that way. We're not like writing your movies. And I feel like, so people talk, the discussion is, and of course, like all of that stuff is really important, but,
right.
We're struggling too. And, it's not, I'm not directing this at you or anything at all. Like also ourselves, I think part of the issue, like, because we do have, meager benefits. We do get pretty good health insurance, 401k, stuff like that. But, when you compare it to like the profits that like the owners and CEOs and upper management's making, and, we're still pretty struggling to get by. And I don't know why we don't organize ourselves either. And I don't know, I guess I just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe if you like have any idea why we like don't talk about my type of worker so much. I don't know. I just kind of wanted to inject that into a discussion.
I think that was really cool. I appreciate the call, and I'm really glad you brought that up. I think there's a lot we could talk about with that, actually. I don't know if Jacob, if you wanted to go first.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that your new listener probably came from Bo, the Fifth Column. That's where a lot of the people have been coming from. So hope you stay around after the fundraiser is over and you continue to listen. We are live every Saturday morning and Thursday morning.
Okay.
And then we also put out clips on the channel all the time. But I am an office worker, actually. I have a clickety-clack job.
Okay.
And I'm a member of a union, the American Federation of Government Employees. There is also, for private sector office workers, there is the Office and Professional Employees International Union, OPEIU. And they represent about 90,000 white-collar working people in the public and private sector. There's also the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, who represent the rocket scientists here at NASA in Huntsville. Among other varied public and private sector employees, nonprofit workers have been unionizing with the nonprofit department of IFPTE. So there are unions out there, but you're definitely right that our unions do not get kind of the same. We are not part of the imagined working class in the way that people conceive of it as, right? When people conceive of working class, a lot of times they think of big, burly, bearded guy in a hard hat on a construction site with dirt or coal on his face, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people that are like that, certainly, less than there used to be, but really the more accurate definition of working class, in my view, is whether or not you sell your labor to make a living, right? We do not own, the means of production. Therefore, we are definitionally not part of the owning class, or bourgeois or whatever. If you wanted to use Marxist terminology, we're definitionally not part of that class. We are definitionally part of the working class. And so even though the work that we do, that you and I do, is with our minds primarily, that's still work. That's still work, and we face a lot of similar problems on the job. We have our own unique struggles that are different than blue collar working people, and we have a lot of the same struggles. But fundamentally, we sell our labor for a living, and therefore, our interests are aligned with the rest of the working class, and we can get more for ourselves and win more for ourselves and our coworkers and our families and our communities if we come together and bargain collectively over our wages and working conditions, and if you were listening when we were talking to Hamilton, over the direction of the company even. And so, totally. So there's absolutely, there are office workers across the country who are already unionized, and everyone else who is an office worker who is not unionized should unionize. And there, even if you think that your workplace is good, and that's actually a great time to unionize. If you feel like you've got everything that you want, your management is super cool, what you need to do is unionize right now and get that locked in to a union contract. Because if you don't have a union contract, management can add or take away anything that they want at any time without your consultation, for any reason or no reason at all. And they can't do that if you have a union contract, right? They can't do that. Right. And so if you've got everything that you want. I also want
to point out something on that, though.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Point it out.
Yeah, because I've been thinking about that a lot. Because also, I think sometimes part of the issue, at least like, for example, at my company, I can't speak to others, but like management is pretty good. HR is pretty good. Like, we have a good company culture. And I think there's two things, is that like, one, some of us, feel like, oh, well, everything's fine, so why unionize? And then maybe, and this is more people like myself, is like I really want to push for a union, but also like I'm scared of losing that good feeling of like, I feel comfy here. You know what I mean? Like, I'm worried about rocking the boat and then making it like, oh man, now it's all awkward, and you know what I mean?
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really important to recognize that that's a real thing that workers face, because I agree with Jacob that when things are going well, sometimes that can be the best time to unionize, right? When maybe you have a more collaborative management and friendlier management, because then maybe, just maybe, they can do a voluntary recognition, and you don't even have to have an election, and you don't even have to get, that confrontational per se. Right. And that's something I think is important, that it doesn't have to be confrontational or adversarial necessarily. Management or the companies, the employers typically take it that direction, but it doesn't have to be that way. And I think we've got to do a better job in our movement telling stories of examples where it is collaborative and where it's a win-win situation, where the workers unionized, the company worked with the union, and guess what? They're all better off for it. I think we got to tell those stories as well, because employers, if they want to do the right thing, they can do the right thing, and they can recognize when their employees organize. They can sit down at the table and negotiate in good faith. So much of this is really just dependent on whether or not employers will be obstinate and try to resist employees' desires. Sometimes it's over money, but a lot of times it's over power and simply just not wanting to share power. But there's a lot, I think, to talk about with that, because I think you're onto something, that there's also a culture among, maybe office workers or these jobs that are sort of half professional, middle class, but still, as Jacob pointed out, you're still selling your labor for a living. You're a worker by any, reasonable definition, but culturally maybe more identified with professional managerial class or the middle class, so to speak. And so that's an issue that I think
Yeah, I was just gonna, because I was thinking while you were answering me the first time, I was thinking, maybe part of the problem too is just like our vocabulary. Like maybe we should stop using terms like blue collar and white collar, like because I'm not sure that distinction is relevant. That whether you're selling your labor through physical or selling it through your distinction more of the working class versus the owner class that you made before. Because I think, like, in like when we're office workers, like we think, oh, well, we're white collar, so, that's just not what we do. That's not for us. The labor movement isn't for us. It's for blue collar. And I don't think that. I think like maybe we should collectively start like thinking about the way we phrase things so that we can help bring the working class together and stop dividing it across this arbitrary line of in which way are we selling our labor,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know that it's necessary to retire those terms. I think that there's a certain amount of analytical value and descriptive value that we can gain from white collar and blue collar and talking about the unique struggles in each of those divisions of the working class. But certainly, the thing that we stress on this show as a what people would call a white collar worker myself, and then Adam kind of straddling the line, being both a union stagehand and then a nonprofit worker, being both white collar and blue collar simultaneously. The guy who founded this show with me is solidly blue collar. He was a machinist union president, right? The thing that we stress is the working class. And, so there are conversations that we can have about, the unique struggles that different pockets of the working class have. But the working class is the important thing. And the struggles that unite us are really the important thing. And the similarities and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to just add there that there's a lot invested in dividing the working class. Along many lines, whether it's racially, whether it's gender and those sorts of divisions and forms of oppression, but also, these cultural divisions and the ways in which, college education and, college education is often, considered synonymous with class. Class is not well understood in America in terms of our media or in popular consciousness. Class is often conflated with education levels, with income levels, with cultural affect, right? And so that's how you end up with someone who is a small business owner who is driving a $100,000 truck, but because he wears flannel and listens to country music, he can try to portray themselves as like a working class, whereas someone who works in an office and has to wear, a button-up and a tie every day may, on the surface, in some people's eyes, culturally not seem as working class, but is actually the one selling their labor for a living and is actually the one having their value taken by a capitalist. And so, there's a lot there, I think, and there's ways in which white-collar, quote-unquote, workers are I think, trained or, encouraged to think of themselves as better off or better than blue-collar workers.
Much to our detriment.
Much to everyone's detriment, everyone around, for sure. So, there was a lot you've generated, I think, in this discussion, and I really appreciate your phone call and bringing that up.
Yeah, well, thank you for having it because, I mean, I just and like you guys pointed out, like I only just got introduced to you and I'll be following and stuff like that. So I don't know, it's good to hear that you guys talk about. I just feel like in the media ecosystem as a whole, I would really like to see us push these kinds of ideas.
Absolutely, totally agree. Thank you very much, caller. Appreciate your time.
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Good luck with the drive.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and as you're going through, your work life, over the next couple of weeks, maybe think about reaching out to OPEIU or IFPTE, the Office and Professional Employees International Union, OPEIU, or IFPTE, the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers.
Yeah, and you did mention IFPTE has a They have a nonprofit employees union, which is a local of IFPTE, and a lot of nonprofits have organized with them recently over the last few years. We've seen really a wave of organizing in nonprofits, which is another area where you see arguments about, oh, well, they don't really need a union, or, you know, a lot of times the nonprofits themselves will be anti-union because they're like, oh, but I thought you were in it for the love of the cause, right? Because you love the children, or you love whoever it is that we're taking care of. You love the animals that we're raising money for. Whatever the situation may be, nonprofits can sometimes exploit that. And so it's really important that the workers at nonprofits have been organizing. And, you know, in some cases, the nonprofits practice what they preach, and they sit down and recognize the union. They work collaboratively with the union. And again, I think that's very important to highlight those stories when they happen. And, you know, so it's really important to think about the ways in which the working class has a lot in common and how we are a coherent class. And not get caught up in some of these cultural divisions that we have, which often are tied to, you know, political parties. And we see this with, you know, the Republican Party tries to portray itself as pro-working class, depending on the day and the time of day. And, you know, of course, Democrats do the same often, you know, taking corporate donations while trying to pander to workers. But, you know, do you sell your labor for a living? Do you own the means of production? What do you own? How do you make a living? Is it from your labor, or do you live off profits? Do you live off rents? Do you live off interest and dividends? Do you have enough money that your money makes its own money, enough to sustain a life? If not, then, you know, you're probably working class. And so we have a lot more in common, despite, you know, real differences that happen, right? There are real differences that are within the working class, depending on industry, depending on race and gender and region, right? The South is particularly exploited and oppressed in this country. And so, you know, those are just a few of the thoughts that come to mind. I really appreciated the phone call, and I think it's important that workers recognize that union organizing is for all of us. It's not just if you have a bad boss. It's not just if you work at a factory or a construction site, right? No matter what kind of job you do, no matter what kind of employer you have and the management you have a right to a voice. You should have a right to a voice. And we all want to have a voice in our work because that's where we spend so much of our time, right? That's so much of our time is spent working for someone else, creating value for someone else. At the very least, we need a voice, and a union provides that voice, and collective organization is how we get stronger, right? Because as one individual worker facing off against the capitalist class, you know, how powerful are you? But as you join together with your fellow workers, that's where a lot of our strength can come from. And so I think that's just really important that folks recognize that. If you have a good job, unionize it anyway. All right, lock it in. Keep secure what you like, because managers can change, you know, boards can change, the economy can change. So it's really important that you look out for one another, build connections and relationships with your coworkers. And maybe at some point, I'm sure over the next, 28, 29 hours, we'll talk more about what do you do to start a union, right? What does that look like? How do you actually go about that? Maybe we can circle back to that. We've got plenty of things to talk about, plenty of time to talk. So, but yeah, appreciate the phone calls. Y'all keep them coming.
Yep, and my fellow union member, another Jacob in my union, AFGE 1858, said, "I don't feel very elite when my neck and back are aching and I'm developing diabetes because I can't get enough physical movement and exertion throughout the day." And then David, like I said, the co-founder of the Valley Labor Report, former president of the Machinists Union, said that, it's office work is generally, can be a pretty unhealthy lifestyle. And, that comes with its own kind of like actual legitimate bodily risks and harms and all of this kind of stuff. So absolutely, every worker deserves a union. Every worker deserves a voice, and all of this good stuff. You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.